Prize Picks, run your game when you want. Speaking of running the game, Bull,
yes.
NBA.com released its updated power rankings, which they do every Monday. Mm-hmm. And for the first time this season, the Cleveland Cavaliers came in at number 1 on the NBA.com power rankings. Here's the top 5 as you see it on your screen. The Cavs at number 1, the Celtics at number 2, the Thunder at number 3, the Mavericks at number 4, and the Grizzlies at number 5. Bull, there are a lot of different reasons NBA.com may have catapulted the Cavs to number 1. They have the best record in basketball. They have one of the best offenses. It could be their depth. It could be the internal improvement. In your mind, what is the one thing that catapulted the Cavs up in front of the Celtics and the Thunder this week to officially get them the number 1 spot in the power rankings?
I think it's 2 things. The first one is an obvious one, that when you do, for whatever they're worth, when you do power rankings early in the season, you're basing it on your expectations for the team. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you think a team's good, but they start 1-4, well, you're still going to have them near the top because it's too early in the season. So I think part of the reason that the Cavs are now higher is they've moved them ahead of teams that they've just played better against, and now we're almost at the 1/3 point of the season. I think the Cavs are 2 games away from being at the 1/3 point of the season. 27 games, 54, that's 81, right? 81.
Oh, they're just a quarter point, essentially. A little more than a quarter. Between a quarter and a third.
Well, 27 games will be a third, and they're 2 games away from 20.
Yeah, so they're between
games.
a quarter
they're
and a third.
They're almost at a third, right? So, yes. And so you're deep enough into the season that you're going to do these where this season is going to be a more important factor than what you thought coming into the season. And so, ultimately, the Cavs have the best record, so they're number 1. But I think the reason that really cements it is the emergence of Evan Mobley. Mm-hmm. Obviously, almost everybody's playing well on the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell's having at least to be in the conversation for MVP. The team is deep. There's a lot of things. But Evan Mobley, and especially the way he played against, was it Charlotte?
Charlotte.
With the 41 points. He's been great all year.
Yeah.
But that was something we've never seen. Mm-hmm. That was his best game of his career to this point.
Yeah.
And he looked like a legitimate superstar, like an elite player in that game. Is he going to be that every night? No, he may just, for this whole season, he's played like an all-star, at the very least a borderline all-star. But that game, he looked like he could win an MVP the way he played that night. We've never seen him play at that level. And so I think the way he's raised his game, and there's been no lull. It's like all season, I'm not saying every game's been great, but he's at least been solid every game. But coming off this game, I don't know, man. Because if he can become the legitimate number 2 guy or the 1B to Donovan's 1A, then the Cavs can play with anyone. Their only flaw as a team right now appears to be their ability to guard the perimeter against really big teams. And that's going to be something they're going to have to deal with, and that might ultimately, kill them when it comes to Boston in the playoffs. But I think this is a sign that Evan Mobley has arrived, which a lot of people thought he could, and he's arrived in a big way, making the Cavs way more legitimate than I think a lot of people thought, including certainly me, coming into the season.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Good on you, boy. I know you're a guy that hated basketball, for meaningless basketball for quite some times, but man, to hear you say that, it was actually spot on.
I appreciate that.
So that was really good. I agree with everything that you said. One thing that I may add is that I do think the reason that they are ahead of a Boston as far as this power ranking goes, because it's a whole team. You got guys off the bench that's also playing really well. You think about the first time they played Boston, they had like 3 or 4 guys off the bench that was out.
Right. Yeah.
And I know when we played Boston, they had some starters out and things like that.
Yeah.
But with the Cavs, they're so deep. It's like that. You got the starting 5, but you also got like 4 or 5 guys off the bench that's also getting you double digits.
Right.
So I think from a team standpoint, that's why I would put them above a Boston right now, because of the simple fact that it's just not just the starting 5. It's literally the entire roster could come in and get you points.
I think I think what's happening right now is, it take a little bit for national media to wrap their head around certain things. Like, they're going to give certain teams like Boston New York. They're going to give those guys the benefit of
Where
their
was
doubt.
New York on that? They was on that 5?
Probably 6 to 10.
I'll pop up the full thing. They weren't top 5 though.
New York is 15-9. Now, I think what you're seeing now is they're like, okay, the Cavs, they might be real. We wanted to see them. They wanted to see them play against Boston. Now that they split against Boston, it's 1-1. You can't use that against them. I think if you would have went 0-2 versus.
Knicks were 8, by the way. Sorry to cut you off, G. But
That's right. If they also beating Denver recently.
They beat Denver at home, which was a good win, and then coupled with the fact that you see Evan Mobley get to 41. They're like, okay, that's 2 really good teams, one in the Western Conference. You did come back and you avenged that loss against the Celtics. So now you got a lot of different data that says, hey, the Cavs is not playing around right now. And I think the imperative is, I still, if you ask me, if you had to have a gun to my head, like who are you picking in a 7-game series? I would, if the Cavs have home court advantage, I think now that I would flip and say that the Cavs would win that series against Boston in the 7-game series. I think, and I want to see what you got to say about Mikey. I think it's imperative that the Cavs get home court advantage throughout. If they can keep the pedal to the metal and consistently play and get home court advantage, and in a 7-game series, I think that's huge against the Celtics.
What's our record at home right now?
They've lost 1 game at home, right, Mike?
The Hawks.
I believe to the Hawks is the only one.
I think it's their only loss at home. The Celtics would be favored in a 7-game series with the Cavs, even if the Cavs had home field.
I agree.
Home court.
Yeah. But
they should be, because they've proven it in the playoffs. The Cavs haven't.
I said that, but I would flip and say that I feel like if the Cavs do have home court advantage, I would pick the Cavs in the 7-game series.
If I had to pick right now, I would pick the Celtics. Now, I would say the Cavs can win that series, which I wouldn't have said last year.
Percentage chance.
I think I'd give them like a 42% chance.
If they have home court.
42.
Without
45 with home court, 40 without.
That's a coin flip series, which
I think
the two best teams in basketball.
But I'd have to give the Celtics the edge because they have more playoff experience.
I would have to see the Cavs have more success against the taller. I need them to see a definitive plan of how they're going to guard taller wings and how they're going to score against taller wings. Once I see that, you got me sold.
Brian, before you go, Mike, Brian Windhorst was on with us last week, and he made the point. He's like, guys, I get it. The Cavs are great. People want them to go all in, but the Celtics are the team to beat right now, and I don't think the Cavs are going to want to stay over the cap, so I don't think they're going to make a trade. And listen, Brian knows a million times more about basketball than I do. I'm not going to deny that. But I don't know. It was something that I think what put me over the top is the way Mobley played against Charlotte. I didn't know if he could ever play a game like that. I don't know.
They should go all in.
I think they should go all in because and again, I could be totally wrong.
No, you're right.
But I don't think the gap between them and Boston, I said I disagree with G that the Cavs would be.
But you said 45-55.
But I think the gap is not that big.
So what do you
And
say?
I think if the Cavs made a trade
for
a wing player who a solid scorer, but most importantly can play good perimeter defense.
Who's out there?
I think that could be the difference between them winning or not winning a Boston series.
Like Cam Johnson or Kyle
No, they don't
Kuzma?
have enough for Cam Johnson. They don't have a ton of trade assets.
They don't. That's the only problem. But I think they should go for it.
To your point, Bull, on that real quick, then I'll get back to the bigger topic at hand here. There's so much luck that goes into winning in the playoffs in basketball. You have to be healthy at the right time.
Yeah.
Like the Raptors when they won with Kawhi.
Yeah.
Do they beat the Warriors if Klay Thompson doesn't tear his Achilles and they have Kevin Durant?
No.
So much luck goes into it that when you have a chance and when you're good enough, and the Cavs, whether you think they're there already or right on the precipice, they're right in that conversation. Hell, they're first in the NBA.com power rankings at that 27% of the season mark.
Yeah.
If you're there, I don't think you can play it passive. I just, philosophically speaking, I don't think you can play it passive or just stand still when you're that close.
Right.
And unless you feel you have the perfect championship roster already,
right,
I
which
don't
they
think
don't.
any of us.
There's one piece
I agree.
they need.
So I don't know what the perfect move out there is. I don't think there's an obvious move on paper that this makes too much sense not to do. They don't have a ton of assets, and I don't want to. We said this last week when we talked about trades.
Yeah.
They have enough asset. They have one bullet to fire. I'm not just shooting just to shoot.
Right.
You have to make sure it's the right fit.
Yeah.
But back to your point on the power rankings real quick. I think when you get to this point of the season, when you go into a season, you have these preconceived ideas of teams of what they're supposed to be, what they're going to be. And you need a certain number of data points before you can actually change.
That's right.
And believe. And for the first couple of weeks, even when they were 14-0, it's like, well, it's still just 15 games. It's not a big enough sample size to fully convince yourselves. But when you look at the Cavs, right now in the NBA, they have the second best offensive rating in basketball, the 9th best defensive rating. They're second overall in net rating. They have a top 10 pace. When they lose games, it's simply the other teams have made more shots. They're still giving up the same quality of looks. They're just making more.
Mike, sorry to cut you off.
It's the right move. They're the best team in basketball right now.
Do those statistics, those ratings, do they factor into the quality of the opponent or no?
No, it's based off possessions, so it's even across the board. So it's per 100 possessions. But when you look at teams, there's no perfect stat in any sport.
Yeah.
When you look at teams that have won at the highest levels over the last 20 years, they always rank high in net rating. And defensive rating, they're always in the top 10-ish. You don't have to be a top 5 defense.
Yeah, right,
but you can't be 17, 18,
no,
19.
No. I had Joe Varden on my podcast today. It'll be out later today. Joe obviously covered the Cavs when LeBron was here. Now he just covers the NBA. He's all over the place. And one of the big reasons I wanted him on, besides the fact that obviously he knows the Cavs well, is he's covering all these other teams. So he has a feel for where the Cavs stack up. And he felt like, he said to me, he's like, the only thing I'm worried about with the Cavs is their ability to defend big teams at the perimeter. And he's like, I think Dean Wade could do it. He just doesn't stay on the floor often enough. So I'd like to have Dean Wade as the backup guy doing that. So if he's there, all right, you got another guy. But if he's not, like, they can't rely on Dean Wade being that guy. He's just too injury prone.
Yeah, Karis LeVert is shown to be slightly injury prone. He's another. Your top 2 guys off the bench are injured all the time.
Yeah.
And look, and I get that people want to have this thing where we're going to time it up perfect, where the stars are going to line up.
Yeah.
We're going to have Donovan, he signs. We'll stay under the luxury tax till then. Listen, at some points in time, we all know in life, something happens and you got to plan for it. Hey, your water heater went out. Did you plan for that?
No.
No, right? But you got to get it done. And right now, it's an opportunity to do something because I don't think the Cavs expected themselves to be this good this early. And the thing about game plans and peaking, I always say this. The Thunder had 3 MVPs on one squad. They had Durant, Harden, Westbrook.
Ain't that crazy?
In their prime. And guess how many championships they won?
0.
None.
Hey, do you know why that team got broken up, G, by the way? Do you, honest to God, remember why?
It started with James Harden.
But do you remember why they broke it up? And this goes back to when you're in a
Harden
championship
wanted
win.
They lost to Kobe in the what? Or no?
They did not want to give James Harden $12 million more dollars. Like, James Harden wanted $12 million more than what they had offered. And they wouldn't go up $12 million, which back then $12 million is not $12 million now, granted.
Sure.
But that was the number. $12 million is what broke up that big 3.
And think about it.
They went to one finals.
Those guys, and they had a young Ibaka at the time, a defensive year player, caliber player.
Sabalosha.
They had the roster. They had rebuilt it the right way. But you don't.
That was my squad.
Do not make short-sighted moves. It's just like, I get the financial aspects of it. The financial aspects don't run sports. Like, it doesn't. Like, if Dan Gilbert wakes up tomorrow and is like, man, I really didn't want to get in a luxury tax. Bro, we remember you from 2016.
Yeah, he has not been afraid in the past to do it. And listen, we don't know what's going to happen. They can make a big trade and then one of their key players can get hurt in the playoffs, they can get screwed.
Right.
But you know what? What if they don't go for it this year and everybody stays healthy? Because they're like, well, next year. And then next year Mitchell gets hurt. And then Mobley gets hurt the year after that. And this was their best chance to potentially win it. I know they're not the favorites, but they can't be that far behind the favorites. So you got to go for it.
When you go back and you look at the Miami Heat, who made the championship in the bubble, and granted the bubble was weird circumstances.
Yeah.
They had a chance after that to then push some more chips in and kind of improve the roster in some areas that hadn't.
Yeah.
And they have still had success. They made the finals as an 8 seed, so they've still done well. However, that looked like a team that could have been back in the playoffs. I mean, in the championship conversation year after year. And granted, they made it, but that was an improbable run as an 8 seed upsetting a 1. You just don't know how long that window is
right.
going to stay open. And when it's there, you kind of have to go for it. And to the luxury tax conversation, it's not necessarily this year that's going to screw them. They could go in this year. It just starts that clock a year earlier than anticipated. And with the extensions kicking into Mobley and Allen and the other guys down the road, that last year is where it gets super dicey that they're kind of scared of. So it's actually not an immediate problem. But when you're looking 4 or 5 years down the road, I don't know how you could punt on a chance. And punt's not the right word because they're in the conversation as is currently constructed.
Right. Yeah.
But if you have an opportunity to improve and catapult yourself and lock yourself into that elite tier, and you don't because of something 4 or 5 years down the road, it just doesn't look good from an optic standpoint, even if it may actually be the smart basketball move.
And the two, so let's because I know
basketball move,
money
move.
I think a
well,
lot.
You know what I'm saying? Money move.
I think a lot of people, because we do Cavs, we're sporadic on it a little bit. Some people might have missed, like, what names. Like, there isn't that many names out there, and the Cavs don't have that many assets. But what names we talked about?
Let
two
me
of them
throw
last
one
week that could move the needle.
Let me throw one. This would move the needle, G. I'm glad you asked this before Mike goes, because I don't think you've mentioned his name recently, and I don't see how the Cavs could get him. But Joe mentioned this to me, and we were out of time, so I couldn't really follow up with him. But he mentioned Zach LaVine.
What?
So someone actually has mentioned Zach LaVine to me before as a.
How could they get him?
They said the person who mentioned this to me said they weren't 100% confident Darius could be your number 2 scoring option in the playoffs. So if
you
you
saying Darius part of the trade?
No. But he said the reason, because LaVine he's not a big, he doesn't defend. He doesn't fit what you're looking for whatsoever.
All right.
But he goes, maybe that's a guy you consider because this one particular person didn't necessarily trust Darius being the number 2 scorer on a deep playoff caliber run team.
It is interesting. I didn't know he was a bad defender, but
plays no defense and he's 6'4".
So, but he's never been on a good team, right?
6'4"? I thought he was
6'5".
I thought he was 6'6". You know, that's exactly so height. They big everybody.
As good as LaVine is offensively, you don't think it's a good fit?
He's listed at 6'5", so my bad. But he's not like that prototypical 6'7", 6'8".
But so he doesn't solve that issue. But
he's a really good offensive player. Really, really
way better than any of these
player.
other guys we've talked about.
From an offensive standpoint,
Yeah.
yes. Does he solve the issue? No.
Who is the best fit for the Cavs?
I told you guys, Herb Jones is my ideal scenario.
No, but even including guys you're not sure they can get.
I mean, Jimmy Butler.
LeBron James.
Who, by the way, Shams reported this morning that the Heat are open to listening to trade offers for Jimmy Butler.
Would Jimmy Butler be a chemistry issue?
They don't have any. They're nowhere near enough assets to get him. But
would he be? I'm just curious. Would he be a chem? I get nervous getting guys that are that big.
Playoff Jimmy Butler is elite. I don't care what you have to do. Like, if you could get him on this team, you'd do it.
All right, so who's the next guy?
We're talking the unrealistic ones. Cam Johnson.
Right.
He's actually the perfect fit.
He's the perfect fit.
He's the perfect
You
fit.
just don't think it's possible.
The Nets said they want 2 first-round picks. The Cavs, as a starting point, the Cavs legitimately
They say
don't
they
have
want that. Would anybody give up 2 first-round picks for him?
Yeah, he's having the best season of his career. He's on a great contract.
Damn, why don't the Cavs
He's
have
6'8".
Well, they wouldn't have Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
We can't trade none of them first yet. Them 2065 picks.
This
20,
is a
20, 20,
bullshit
31.
rule that you can't trade back-to-back.
Dang.
Change that rule.
2031's the first.
Cavs can trade their
they
next
could
10 draft picks available.
Man, 2031. That's wild.
But Cam Johnson is the, on paper, legitimate, perfect basketball fit.
All right, so the best guy you think they could realistically get is Herb Jones.
I think Herb Jones for the asking price. Unless you want Brandon Ingram. I
He
like
with the
Herb
Pelicans,
Jones over
right?
Brandon Ingram. They're both with the Pelicans.
No, what's the other dude? What's the shooter?
They're not trading Trey Murphy.
That's
they ain't doing that.
That's the one.
Is Herb Jones, could Herb Jones, as silly as this may sound, be the difference, be the X factor between winning in 7 and losing in 7 against the Celtics?
Yeah, I actually do think he could. Genuinely speaking.
Is
Then go
he-
get him.
I really
thought
do.
he was a defensive guy. He ain't the defensive guy for them.
No,
he is, right?
Very,
Okay.
very good defensive.
That's
Where
what
is
I
he
thought.
defensively? Like, in terms of perimeter defenders, is he elite? Is he very good? Like what?
No, he's very, very. He was. Did he make second team all defense last year?
Either last year or 2 years ago, they was talking about him. He was like either first or second team.
He's not old
He
either,
made
right?
no. He made
No,
the
he's
all.
young.
He made the All NBA defensive first team last year.
Shit.
Okay, so
So-
he's elite.
We're talking elite level defender.
All right, and he's young, right?
How tall is he?
He's 6'7" with a 6'11" wingspan.
But he's not that great offensively,
Plus,
right?
Decent shooter.
yeah, but they don't need him to be great offensively.
Yeah,
They
you
just
do.
need him not to be a liability.
Isaac Okoro.
Yeah, but he's not. He's better than Isaac Okoro. and
He's
bigger
bigger
than
and a
Isaac
better
Okoro.
defender than I.
What are you looking at? What's the cost for him?
considering this is a season, and we got a Didi, so last point on the Cavs will bring a Didi in. But
Could Isaac Okoro be part of a trade?
potentially,
Like, if you get Herb Jones, do you need Isaac Okoro?
I'd take him.
no. I mean, if you'd have to get so New Orleans would. I'll try to make this as simple as possible.
Yeah.
If New Orleans is going to blow it up,
Right.
they're not going to want to take on Okoro, who's on a 3-year deal.
Oh, it is,
So I think
right.
Karis LeVert is part of the deal because he's an expiring contract. You throw George Niang in and the first-round pick.
But
You'd rather trade Okoro than
but
You'd
that-
rather, but
LeVert,
the other
yeah.
team.
don't you get worse offensively though if you trade Karis LeVert?
It's not a perfect fit, G. Like there's not a. You just don't have the like. Let me ask you a question, G. What team, if you want to put together the Cavs' ideal package, Niang, Okoro, and a 2031 first, like what's that getting you?
Nothing.
A bag
So
of
you have to
chips.
give something to get something. That's the Cavs' issue.